This happened in October of 2014, back when I was 19 and thought fear was just another form of entertainment. I grew up in a small town in northern New Jersey, the kind of town where half the buildings were abandoned and everyone knew about that one place you weren't supposed to go. For us, that place was an old church at the top of a closed-off hill road. The road leading up to it had been blocked with concrete barriers for years. The church itself had been empty for as long as anyone could remember. Windows broken, doors hanging crooked, covered in graffiti. Naturally, we decided it would be the perfect place to mess around with a Ouija board. It was me, my friend Sean, and our mutual friend James. Sean was the one who owned the board. He kept it in the back of his closet, like it was some kind of forbidden artifact. He claimed he didn't believe in it, but he treated it with way too much respect for someone who didn't believe. We drove up there around 11:30 p.m. We had to park at the base of the hill and walk the rest of the way in the dark. At first, we used just one flashlight so we wouldn't draw attention, but once we reached the top, all three of us switched ours on. The church looked worse at night. It sat surrounded by woods on all sides, like the trees were slowly swallowing it. Gravel crunched under our shoes as we approached the entrance. The front door was already slightly open. We had to shove it hard to get inside because it dragged across the warped wooden floor. The air inside was stale, thick. It smelled like wet wood and dust. We swept our flashlights around to make sure no one else was there. Empty pews, collapsed sections of ceiling, graffiti covering what used to be scripture on the walls. Sean grinned and pulled the Ouija board from his backpack. "Let's make it official," he said, taking out 3 candles. He placed them in a triangle around the board. When we turned off our flashlights, the only light in the entire church came from those 3 small flames. That's when it stopped feeling funny. The shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. The darkness beyond the candlelight felt deeper than it should have. Sean placed his fingers on the planchette. "Is anyone here with us?" "Nothing." James snorted. "You have to say it creepier." Sean tried again. "Is there a spirit present in this church?" The planchette moved. Slowly. We burst out laughing. I was sure one of them was pushing in it. That's how these things always go. It spelled out HELLO. Very original. We kept going, asking dumb questions, getting short, vague answers. Then, crack. The sound exploded from the direction of the altar. It wasn't subtle. It sounded like a thick wooden board snapping clean in half. All 3 of us jumped. Sean grabbed his flashlight and aimed it toward the front of the church. Nothing. No movement, no shadows, no person. Just the broken remains of the altar platform sitting there in silence. We stared for a solid 30 seconds. "It's an old building," James muttered. "Stuff shifts." That explanation was good enough for us. We sat back down. This time, when we placed our fingers on the planchette, no one was laughing. "Was that you?" Sean asked quietly. The planchette didn't move. The air felt colder. Not dramatically, just noticeably. We sat there for maybe another minute in total silence. Then it happened. Another sound from the altar. But this one wasn't a crack. It was a dragging noise, like something being pulled across wood. Before we could even react, something slammed down onto the Ouija board. All 3 of us screamed and fell backward. It was a rock about the size of a golf ball. It had landed directly in the center of the board. There was no one near us. We had all been touching the planchette. No one had stood up, and the altar was at least 20 feet away. We didn't investigate, we ran. We didn't stop running until we were halfway down the hill. Gravel slipping under our shoes, branches snapping around us. I was convinced someone was chasing us. We jumped into my car and locked the doors immediately. For a solid 30 minutes, we just sat there breathing heavily, replaying it over and over. Sean was pale. We invited something, he kept saying. I didn't believe that. I still don't. But here's the part I can't explain. The next afternoon, Sean and James went back to retrieve the board. The candles were still there. The wax had melted exactly where we left it. But the Ouija board was gone. Not broken, not damaged. Gone. No sign of it anywhere inside the church. No footprints in the dust besides theirs. Sean swears we contacted something that night. I think someone else was in that church with us. And I honestly don't know which possibility scares me more. To this day, that remains the single most terrifying experience of my life. I graduated high school in 2011. That summer, my friend Caleb moved with his family to a rural part of South Carolina, just outside a place called Bishopville. It was the kind of town where the nearest grocery store was 20 minutes away and everyone waved at passing cars. A month after he moved, my friend Ryan and I drove down to spend a weekend with him. There wasn't much to do out there. No malls, no movie theaters, just woods. So Saturday afternoon, we decided to explore. Behind Caleb's house was a stretch of forest that seemed to go on forever. About 30 minutes into walking, we found a narrow river cutting through the trees. The water was calm, almost perfectly still in some places. It felt peaceful. Too peaceful. We followed the river, figuring it would eventually lead somewhere. A road, a bridge, anything. But after an hour, we realized we had no idea which direction we were heading. The trees all looked the same. Our phones had no signal. That's when we saw the building. It was set back from the river, barely visible through the trees. Old red brick, no visible sign. The windows were tall and narrow, and most of them looked dark from the outside. A dirt lot stretched in front of it. 3 old white sedans were parked side by side, all rusted, all with flat tires. They looked like they hadn't moved in years. Then we heard singing. Soft, slow, almost like a hymn, but not one I recognized. We looked at each other. Okay, so people, Ryan said. That's good. We walked toward the entrance and pushed open the heavy wooden doors. Inside, about 20 people sat on wooden pews. The air smelled like dust and something faintly metallic. An elderly woman with thin white hair sat at an upright piano near the front. The moment the door creaked open, she stopped playing. The singing stopped. And every single person in that room turned to look at us. Not gradually, all at once. I've never experienced silence like that before. It felt thick, heavy. Caleb cleared his throat. Sorry, we're lost. We were wondering if we could use a phone. No one answered. No one blinked. They were dressed neatly, but their clothes looked outdated. Muted colors. Long sleeves despite the heat. And that's when I noticed something strange. There were no crosses, no religious symbols, no decorations at all, just blank walls. A man in the front row slowly stood up, then another. The wooden pews creaked as more of them rose to their feet. We didn't wait to see what happened next. We backed out and shut the door. The second we were outside, Ryan whispered, "That wasn't a church." We started walking quickly down the dirt road leading away from the building. About 50 yards down, I glanced back. 10 or 12 men had come outside. They weren't speaking. They were just standing there, watching us. That's when we ran. We ran until our lungs burned and the lights started fading. Eventually, we stumbled onto a cracked 2-lane road where an abandoned gas station sat on the corner. Inside, the shelves were nearly empty. An older man stood behind the counter flipping through a small paperback book. He didn't look surprised to see us. "You boys come from the river?" he asked. We froze. He gave us directions to the highway. Simple enough. But when we stepped back outside, I turned around one more time. He was standing in the doorway now, arms crossed, smiling. Not a friendly smile. More like he knew something we didn't. We followed his directions and eventually made it to the highway just after dark. A county sheriff's deputy pulled over when he saw us trying to flag down cars. When we told him where we'd been, his expression changed. He didn't ask questions, he just said quietly, "You don't want to wander near that property again." On the drive back, he added one more thing. There are groups out there that don't like visitors, they don't call themselves churches, and they don't like being found. We never went back into those woods, but sometimes I think about how those men didn't chase us. They didn't need to. They knew we'd leave on our own.